they got more sense. It's probably really cool. Jump on.
Yeah. He's done a bunch of stuff, you know, he was in touch with me for something else, and you know, so like just. Gosh, that's a good idea. I think Crash is the sort of like classic dumb, funny animal. You know, he's sort of like he's got a lot in common with Stan Laurel in that kind of way, you know, or Harpo Marx or anything like that. Or you know, he's the one who doesn't really talk. He just kind of does silly things and causes a lot of hassle, and yet somehow manages to come out of it. You know, sort of like okay. I mean, again, if he fell in a river, he'd come out with a mouthful of trout. You know, and again, Cortex is kind of like, you know, Oliver Hardy. You know, he's sort of like, they're together, but why are they together? Because it seems like they absolutely hate each other, and one of them is constantly victimizing the other, and you know, he's just got that kind of streak to him. So as I say, I think they've sort of evolved into these archetypes that just sort of like that appeals to people. A lot of it goes back to just classic, almost Laurel and Hardy stuff, or Three Stooges, or any of that kind of, you know, sort of like slapstick screwball comedy, and then, you know, there's sort of like. There's also sort of like a certain risque element, you know, sort of like it becomes, I guess, a little bit more body than it might have been before. And again, you know, sort of like that's very much the style of humor that cartoons these days have evolved towards. You know, it's sort of cartoons sort of like exist on two levels, where there's this sort of like the crazy sheer slapstick comedy, and then there's the stuff that the grown-ups get. And I think that works nicely for people transitioning through teenage years into adulthood and whatnot. They can continue to get their yucks at slapstick comedy, and yet they start to see other things that sort of like were not maybe obvious to them before. And I think that's what we've done with Crash this time. There's a greater danger that comes to Insanity Island. It's a kind of case of chickens coming home to roost. One of Dr. Cortex's earlier experiments backfires, as Crash did. Crash was an experiment of Dr. Cortex's, but there's something else happened before Crash, and the results of which come back to haunt Dr. Cortex in the present, and the only way that he can get out of it is with Crash's help. So they're kind of reluctantly paired. You know, he still hates him, but they're working together. The evil twins are these characters that appear and threaten Cortex and Crash. They're these sort of mutated, giant-headed but kind of small-bodied, kind of freakish little creatures that look vaguely bird-like, that have come to destroy Insanity Island and take destroy Cortex and Crash. Actually, they want to take Cortex's brain, which I think is actually probably worse for him than destruction. And yeah, those are the ones who you have to team up against. It's Crash and Cortex versus the evil twins. They there's a bunch of different gameplay styles that we have that we have wacky names for. Things like rollerball, humili-skate, twin spin, twin throw, twin slam, all of this that results out of Cortex and Crash acting together. The rollerball, for example, is like the classic cartoon dust bowl fight with, like, you know, arms flying and dust and stars and, you know, things flying out of it and whatnot. Crash and Cortex are locked in Mortal Kombat like that, but you can control them. So you move them around even though they're still fighting, and you have to sort of like progress them through the level as they're doing that. Later on, Crash grabs Cortex and drags him around, and that you can use that effectively upgrades Crash's natural spinning ability, because it increases his range. So, you know, he has his arm, Cortex's arm, and Cortex at the other end of it. So when he does a spin, it's a huge spin, so he can cause a lot more damage that way. Cortex has also got this rather sort of like flat-shaped head, which allows Crash to use him as a big yellow mallet, so he can do an overarm swing and flatten things with Cortex's big flat mallet-y head. and just again things like that. There's a lot of puzzles in the environment where you have to actively use things that you may have seen in Crash before, as well as things that you haven't. So things like, for example, TNT crates. If you jump on a TNT crate in Crash Bandicoot, the classic standard is it goes 3, 2, 1, boom, blows up. But now we can actually position those next to destructible environmental pieces like trees, and you can actually cause trees to fall over and use it as a bridge to cross over into an area that you couldn't get to before. There's other things like that. There's we have cannon. We have these like tiki head things where you have to get up on top of them and you have to fire a cannonball into the mouth of the tiki head, which causes it to blow up, and then the mouth shuts. So now it's high enough that you can, it's low enough, I should say, that you can get on top of it. Just lots of stuff like that. It starts off the first level, as well as having a huge explorable area where you can just sort of like run around and play with lots of different physics toys and games and puzzles and tricks, and just get a lot of the feel of Crash like that. Also, the first level, in a very comedic way, leads you through a sort of recap of Crash moves. So if you've never played Crash before, this will introduce you to Crash's basic moveset and just get you up to speed. And if you have played it before, hopefully the way it's done, the comedy way it's done, it'll be just sort of like a fun, friendly reminder. So I think we're definitely thinking that we can appeal to both crowds that way. Again, as I say, it is the next evolution of Crash if you've played Crash before. So you'll play this and definitely sort of like get the feeling that Crash has grown up and moved on a little, but still has all of those elements that you loved before. And if you've never played it before, it's just a great fun game. And the whole thing just plays. If you had the patience, the talent, and the skill, you could play all the way through, and it would just be like one big long cartoon.